Good morning, everyone. I would like to begin by welcoming you to this training session related to media literacy, critical thinking, and education. In this presentation, I aim to share both theoretical and practical insights into the importance of media literacy and its close relationship with the critical thinking. These two competencies are essential for navigating today's dynamic information environment and for fostering responsibility, reflective, and informative citizenship. Before we delve into the subject, I would like to outline our training structure. The first segment focuses on media literacy, its definition, development, and contemporary relevance. The second segment explores critical thinking, highlighting its analytic and evaluation functions within the context of media literacy. And our objective is not merely to define these terms, but to recognize how they shape the educational process, influence our interpretation of media, and contribute to informed participation in the modern democratic society. Throughout this session, I will emphasize practical cases and theoretical frameworks that support lifelong learning and adaptability. When we discuss about the media literacy today, we must understand that literacy has evolved beyond the traditional concept of reading and writing, as UNESCO articulated in 1982, that we must prepare the young for life in a world of powerful images, words, and sound. But this statement remains proudly relevant. Media literacy now emphasizes the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create messages across various forms of media. It enables individuals to interpret content critically, identify manipulation, and use media ethics. In essence, this is about developing the capacity of thinking about media rather than simply consuming. Media literacy operates on three essential levels. The first involves the ability to access and comprehend information, recognizing media codes, language, and intention. The second level is production, the ability to create, adapt, and share messages with possibility. And the third level is critical reflection, which focuses on understanding how media influence participation, relationships, and decision making. In the digital era, media literacy intersects with several complementary literacies like digital information and functional literacy. Digital literacy involves technical competencies in users, devices, and software. Information literacy focuses on finding, evaluating, and using data responsibly, and functional literacy is concerned about the ability to apply these skills in real-world context. Media literacy integrates all three, emphasizing not only technological skills but also interpretive awareness and ethical dissemination. This synthesis enables individuals to become informed participants in the information society rather than the passive consumers of digital content. Our concept that helps illustrate this evolution is what I call an information. In this metaphor, information functions as a consumer product, packaged, marked, and sold in an endless digital market. We do no longer merely seek knowledge, we purchase opinions, identities, and ready-made words. This consumerist approach encourages positivity and discourages critical thought. As educators, our task is to guide students to examine information as consequently as they will impact the quality of thought before consumption. Several global trends define the current state of media literacy. Firstly, the rise of misinformation, disinformation, and deepfakes poses significant challenges to the truth and trust. Secondly, AI literacy has emerged as a vital component, understanding not only how to use AI tools, but also how algorithms shape our perceptions of reality. And additionally, media literacy increasingly overlaps with other literacies such as scientific civics, the climate literacy, demonstrating the media competence is interdisciplinary. And finally, this institutional integration, embedding media literacy in the educational policy, has become a key strategy for building the society's capability of resistance manipulation. To contextualize this idea, I often refer to practical experiences from Macedonia. The country initiated its first national media literacy program in the late 2000s, supported by the international partners. These initiatives are training teachers to help students recognize bias, verify information, and also The long-term goal is to equip both educators and learners with digital tools that foster democratic values, tolerance, and intercultural understanding in the increasingly globalized media environment. At this point, I usually invite participants to take part in the short online quiz on the media literacy. The purpose is not assessment, but reflection, an opportunity to measure how we interact, interpret, and analyze the information we encounter daily. Engaging with this quiz encourages us to translate theoretical understanding into self-awareness, recognizing our strengths and the areas where we must further develop analytical precision and the ethical responsibility. Now, let's move on the principles about critical thinking, that is our disciplinary ability to analyze, evaluate, and synthesize information in order to form rational until the given thought. When we are talking about the let's consider here some exercise, simple, which imagine reading two articles about the same economic event. So one describes the situation as a deterioration, the other says improving. May decide the same data, yet their theoretical training is shaping, and also here we have the same stuff as is needed to be interpreted in the case that we do have now. On the other side, we may continue about the in order to reiterate this concept, I want to introduce participants to critical thinking quiz, which is about the exercise which exercise the ability to identify bias, detect logical facilities, and evaluate source credibility. Beyond testing comprehension, it helps participants internalize the principles we discussed, making critical thinking an habituation response rather than an occasional academic exercise. As we conclude this section, I would emphasize that media literacy and critical thinking are not static achievements. They evolve continually. In a rapid changing information environment, our task is to remain attentive, reflective, and adaptable. The more we encourage critical with information, the more resilient and autonomous we become as a learner, educators, and citizens. Continuous inquiry and ethical awareness are the foundation of meaningful education in the digital era. Having discussed the evaluation of the media literacy, I want to transition gradually toward the theme of the critical thinking. The two concepts are inseparable. Media literacy provides the context, when critical thinking supplies the method. In the next part of this presentation, we will explore how critical thinking enables individuals to interpret media messages with greater precision, to identify manipulation, and to encourage constructive in the public sphere. It is through critical thinking that media literacy becomes the transformative lender of information. At this point, we begin our dedicated exploration of the critical thinking. While media literacy focuses on understanding messages, critical thinking concerns a process of reasoning that enables us to evaluate these messages objectively. It is an intellectual discipline grounded in the clarity, accuracy, logic, and faith. In my work, I often describe critical thinking as a lifelong habit, a continuous process of questioning, analyzing, and refining one's understanding of reality. It does not seek to eliminate doubt, but to use doubt as a tool for deeper comprehension. So, critical thinking is often defined as an ability to analyze and evaluate information in order to form a reasoned judgment. However, this definition not always scratches the surface. The true value of critical thinking lies in its application. If active, individuals can navigate complexity, challenge assumptions, and recognize the interplay between the emotions and the logic. In the digital world, where spirit often replaces deep, cultivating reflective thoughts is an act of intellectual resistance. It enables us to pause, assess, and respond truthfully rather than direct input. There are several core dimensions to effective critical thinking. The first is curiosity. What does it mean? It means the willingness to ask questions and receive understanding. Second is skepticism, the ability to doubt claims without descending into a cynicism. And the third one is humility, which means recognizing the limits of the one knowledge and remaining open to correction. These dimensions create a foundation of religious reason. They transform learning into an active dialogue between the individual and the world, which is characterized by open, greater than acceptance. When we think about the critical thinking, I emphasize this is not about constant criticism or negativity. Instead, it's about structured reasoning. A critical thinker does not reject ideas outright, but examines their foundations, asking for evidence, exploring context, and evaluating implications. This balanced mindset is vital for modern learners who must process large volumes of information daily. It ensures understanding is grounded not in emotional authority, but in rational inquiry and empirical evaluation. Also, critical thinking involves a set of wider questions which support systematic analysis. For instance, what is strongest counterargument? Are we solving a symptom of addressing a rule? Who benefits from dissemination of this information? Or it may be like, have we clearly defined our terms? These questions are powerful because they shift focus from the surface to the underlying structure of arguments. They foster intellectual independence and encourage limits to build conclusions through evidence and assumption. In the recent year here, we have that the integration of AI and digital tools into education has transformed how we approach critical thinking. Artificial intelligence can assist learning by generating diverse perspectives, which are offering feedback and personalized instruction. Yet, it also risks promoting cognitive shortcuts, encouraging students to rely on machines rather than their own reason. So, as educators, we must guide learners to use technology as an ally, not as substitute. The goal is to enhance analytic capacity, not to automate. The emergence of hybrid and online learning models are likewise reshaping pedagogy of the critical thinking. Virtual environments, if well designed, can foster meaningful declaration and collaborative problem solving. However, they can also encourage superficial engagement if interaction becomes performative render authority in that learning. Then we can say about the further trend is the growing focus of ethics, bias, and misinformation within critical thinking education. The modern media landscape requires us not only to analyze data, but also to assume the moral dimension, how information can be used to manipulate, exploit, or polarize. In my teaching, I emphasize that critical thinking is also ethical thinking. It's called for theory, it's called for empathy, and it's called for commitment to truth. To think critically is to care about the consequences and want judgment on others and the society as a whole. Here, as we approach the conclusion of the secondary section, we want to underscore the critical thinking is about personal disciplinary and societal necessity. It equips individuals to make informed decisions and to resist manipulation, to contribute meaningful to collective movement. By combining media literacy and critical thinking, we build an educational framework that not only informs but also empowers. This synergy creates learners not how they only to be aware of their world, but also they to be capable of transforming it through reason, ethical, and reflective actions. Always, in to illustrate this critical thinking in practice, I often introduce real-world scenarios. This includes cases of manipulated news reports that can be used, in the previous slides, also the edited videos or emotional charged social media posts. Participants are asked to identify inconsistencies, detect emotional triggers, and evaluate relatability. Through the exercises, learners experience firsthand that critical thinking is not about the abstract, but actually it's a method of the navigating real information challenge. Here we can also mention the concept of competent sources. In the digital era, authority is often confused with popularity, a viral influence that may appear credibility simply because of visibility. I remind learners the competence depends on expertise, transparency, and accountability, not the number of followers, but evaluating sources critically helps to restore respect for professional standards in journalism, academia, and science. These are the areas where credibility is earned through evidence and not through the emotion. Also, here we can say some trends, the practical techniques that I teach actually involve the triangulation method. These are the methods that require verification information throughout the last three independent sources before accepting the truth. This simple rule encourages analytic discipline and protects against impulsive shift. In workshops, this exercise often provokes reflection, like many realize how easy our emotion overrides reason outcome. Cultivating awareness of this cognitive bias is essential for sustainable ethical digital ethics. Critical thinking also can extend to visual literacy. So in the visual literacy, we have images and videos. In images and videos, while powerful, can be misleading to selecting framing, editing, or omission. Teaching students to analyze compassion, symbols, and context helps them to see beyond surface meaning. Visual analysis fosters not only comprehension but also empathy, as learners come to understand how representation influence perception and ultimately social relations. Also, here we have the emotions in the reasoning deserves, which here it deserves special attention. Emotions can clarify or distort, motivate injury, and reinforce direction. In my classes, I emphasize that emotions should not be excluded but examined. Understanding emotional responses to media enables individuals to separate personal reactions from factual to analysis. This emotional intelligence is about the strengthening critical thinking, allowing for judgment that is both reason and human. Another dimension is cognitive bias and awareness, which is about all human beings rely on shortcuts to process complex information. Confirmation bias are one of the group thinking are among the most common. Recognizing these tendencies also helps prevent intellectual complexity. I encourage women to view awareness of bias as empowerment, not good, by identifying one of the mental patterns which gains the freedom to think about more conceptually and they give the others for most free. We also address the AI-generated misinformation, which means that these technologies can challenge our very nation of our curiosity. It enables to distinguish genuine content from artificial fabrication, and not only technical literacy, but also philosophical reflection. In this context, I agree that the truth must be defended through verification, transparency, and ethical content. We have also the concept of cognitive overloading. What does it mean? Refers here in our case it refers as warning. What does it mean? It means that over dependence on AI tools and digital aids may graduate errors analytic performance. It's easy to let technology think for us. Therefore, critical thinking education must balance efficiency with reflection. The ultimate goal is to reject digital assistance, but to ensure that human judgment remains the final authority in this domain. So case studies again prove useful. For instance, a mid-year report about the local event made critical across the social media, generated outrage before the facts are confirming. By retrieving why this happened, students uncover the role of emotion, bias, and algorithm amplification. So through such analysis, learners begin to see media systems as living organisms, complex, adaptive, and shaped by the human intention. Another valuable exercise focuses on source evaluation. So what does it mean? Students compare two complementary media accounts on the same story, analyzing differences in evidence, tone, and omission. They discuss what each outlet might gain from its framing. This type of comparative reasoning cultivates not only analytical skills, but also ethical sensitivity. It teaches that every narrative carries moral weight and the responsibility which is reading requires moral and intellectual engagement. In more advanced discussion, I will introduce argument method. So this is the method with visually organized premises and conclusions. It helps readers to identify logical structure and fallacy. By making reasoning, students make the invisible architecture of arguments which are possible. So this technology demystifies complex debates, showing that clarity of proof often depends not on intelligence but on the organization. Another useful framework here should be the Bloom's-Task model cognitive skills, which means progressing from remembering and understanding to analyze, evaluate, create. Media literacy exercise can be aligned with this model, encouraging learners to extend from passive awareness to active critical and creative production. By structuring tasks according to cognitive needs, education should gradually guide students toward other intellectual mastery. To maintain engagement, I often incorporate interactive elements such as debates and short reflective essays. In these activities, students apply the theory that real situations demonstrating comprehension through arguments. Such participatory learning reinforces our cognitive. It turns critical thinking from a theoretical ideas to a lived academic practices and example which they are going to remember. It's really challenging to show how to balance the freedom of expression with the need of accuracy and the respect. In the open society, these participate sometimes conflict. I encourage students to view the tension as a productive more than a problematic. So what does it mean? It means that this is a space where democratic maturity develops. Through all this recent debate and evidence-based dialogue, we can protect both freedom and integrity without compromising either. So, in order to reinforce this understanding, I invite participants to take part of the critical thinking quiz. The exercise provides key themes beyond logic, evidence, and ethics through interactive questions. Rather than testing memories, the quiz stimulates reflection. It helps participants show their analytic habits and recognize how they are relying on intuitions instead of systematic evidence. The result of this exercise often provoke meaningful discussion. Participants share moments when they discover their own bias and change opinions through reflection. These dialogues embody the essential critical thinking, humility, openness, and courage to recognition. So such exchanges reveal the education reader's success lies not in the transmission of facts but also the transformation of the thought. As we conclude this training, I want to reiterate the central conviction. Media literacy and critical thinking are the dynamics competencies. They are they are working um, involved alongside technology, which involve culture and communication. To remain relevant, we must commit to continuous learning and adaptation. In this sense, in the end of this presentation, it is not closure but is continuation, a call to practice awareness and reflection of every day. In closing, I wish to express my gratitude for your attention and participation. I hope this session has provided not only information but also inspiration, a renewed appreciation for the power of truthful and engagement in the digital age. Let us continue cultivating wisdom, empathy, and responsibility in all our interactions in media and with one another. These qualities are ultimately the foundation of both education and humanity.